there are other people who are vying and dying to win them over. And they have all the tools and the techniques. So, you might just say to your child, okay, just leave me alone, I need to take some time. Go to your mother. Or the mother might be busy, okay, leave me alone now. We think it's just a child, right? 2 years old, 3 years old. What happens? This causes a scar in the child. They learn that they cannot find a listening ear when they need it from their parents. It's not going to happen from one time. It's not going to happen from 2 times, 3 times, 10 times maybe. But when it happens over and over again, it creates a scar in the heart of the child. So they learn not to share or not to confide in to their parents. So what do? They start holding back. And they start bottling up, and they start venting outside the house with their friends, with their classmates. They start speaking. What does this do? From their classmates, they're going to hear similar stories. They will hear someone, their age, their experience, who will share the experience and validate their feelings and emotions. Slowly, slowly, they learn to trust people outside the house and not inside the house. And we are completely unaware of this because we think it's legitimate. I'm tired, I'm working like 10 hours every day. I'm working 8 hours every day. I've been stuck in the traffic for 2 hours and so on and so forth. I need some peace of mind, right? And rightly so. But you need to realize the kid needs to talk. And oftentimes, we don't see our kids, and that's my next point. We don't see our kids as human beings. And this is something we have to be careful about. Your kids are not your property. Your kids are not they're not like your car. They're not like your TV. They're not like a table. You don't possess them. They are a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't even own yourself. You don't even own yourself. We are supposed to say, Inna lillah, we belong to Allah. You don't even belong to yourself. So let alone your kids, that they belong to you. But we seem to be blinded to this. We think our kids are just like toys. We can do whatever we want. We can tell them off. We can tell them to stay silent. We can tell them to, do what we want them to do. We don't treat them as persons, as human beings who have feelings, who have intentions, who have desires, who have expectations, who have dignity and respect. Sometimes when a child, and oftentimes actually, when a child makes a mistake, we become judgmental. We tell them off. We punish them harshly. And sometimes the punishment is not to educate them. By the way, punishment, as a principle, it does work. But when we punish our children, while we do this to avenge ourselves, to vent our anger. When it becomes personal, punishment backfires. Discipline backfires. The child feels that it's personal. But when you do this in a caring and loving fashion, discipline pays off. It pays off. So we need to remind ourselves that this is a human being, this is a gift from Allah, a trust. That a precious trust from Allah that I am supposed to look after and deal with very carefully for the sake of Allah. So you deal with Allah through your child. And that's what Imam al-Qayyim says. You're not just dealing with some property that you possess and own and you have full control over. This kind of attitude, unfortunately, obviously is very rampant and widespread in other cultures. And mainly it's very common in Muslim countries. And as I said, it might work, and it does work in those countries. But no longer, by the way, because the Western culture is taking over even Muslim countries. And we know this. So, we need to change an attitude here. If you try to change a behavior without changing the attitude behind it, you're wasting your time. You need to see this child as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you are not entitled to do whatever you want, whatever you feel like in the moment, because that's your child. Your child doesn't mean your property. It means your child, that's your trust. You are supposed to help that child, get them ready to deal with life, and to show them the way that leads to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's your job. So you have to take very careful care of the child. You cannot abuse that authority that Allah gave you. You cannot abuse it. And if you abuse it, you will be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, the same statement from Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ was never like harsh with these kids. Would never tell them off, would never smack them. The Prophet ﷺ, how did he deal with Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn? The Prophet ﷺ, he himself sees one of the children of his companions. He sees this child and he says, he knows that the child used to play with this little bird called An-Nughayr, small bird. The Prophet ﷺ looks at him and he plays with him and he says, Ya Aba Umayr ma fa'al An-Nughayr. That's the kunya, the nickname of this child, Aba Umayr. And it's rhyming. Ya Aba Umayr ma fa'al An-Nughayr. Oh Abu Umayr, what did this little bird of yours do? Where did it go? What happened to it? So the Prophet ﷺ, who used to lead that nation, he would approach that child and he would speak to him in that friendly manner. One of the younger companions, his name is Mahmud radiyallahu anhu, he says, I remember when the Prophet ﷺ came, when he was in Medina, first came to Medina, I remember him visiting us in our house, visiting my father. And I still remember when the Prophet ﷺ put some water in his mouth and he spat it and he splashed it and spat it on my face. He says, لا زلت أذكر مجة مجها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في وجهي وأنا ابن خمس. When I was 5 years old. The Prophet ﷺ goes and visits his companion. The child comes around, the Prophet ﷺ has some water in his hand. He puts it in his mouth and he spits it in the face of that child as a friendly gesture. The Prophet ﷺ was giving the khutbah. The khutbah on Friday where no one is supposed to talk, you're supposed to listen. It's a very formal setting. Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn walk into the masjid wearing new clothes, new thawbs. So they were a little bit long, so they stumbled and they fell. The Prophet ﷺ left the minbar and he went to them, he carried them and brought them back with him on the minbar. Then he carried on his khutbah. Then he said, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ. And he says, الْمَالُ وَالْبَنُونَ زِينَةُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. He says, these children are like the beautification of this life. They are the adornment of this life. So he says, when I saw them, I could not even hold myself back. I sort of found myself, that's what the statement sort of translates, I found myself approaching them and carrying them. So these are a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are not supposed to see them as our property. When we see them as our property, we will abuse that. When we feel drained, when our willpower has been exhausted by work, by traffic, by certain people who don't treat you well here and there, basically you will abuse that authority. And we will pay a very hefty price for that. So we need to see them as trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this will help us give them genuine respect. Genuine respect. Something that helps with this is to see your child in your mind's eye 20 years later. 20 years later. He's 5 years old or she's 5 years old. Deal with them while you have in mind that 20 years from now they will be a complete adult. This will hold you back from using force, by the way. Because yes, they are now helpless, I have the power. But what about 20 years from now? Will I still use the power or the force? And a lot of people who've used force with their kids, now when their kids reach a defiant age, sometimes it's as early as 13, sometimes earlier, or 15, or 18, or 20, the child starts speaking back. So what worked for you in the first 10 years of their life, and you were feeling safe, you had control, that's not going to last. And now they have developed so much pain, emotional pain from that, they're going to take it back on you, and now they have all the support from external sources, all the brainwashing, and they have the power, personal power. So they will be defiant to you. They won't respond to you. So better options would be to actually win them over. Win them over. So from a young age, we need to look at our mistakes. Small things that happen, as I said, a child wants to talk to you and you don't have the time for that. Or a child says something and it sounds ridiculous for you. Because you know this since you were a kid. But for the child, it's a revelation. It's a learning experience. It's something new. Something that makes them feel proud about themselves. And for you, oh, that's normal. What do you talk about this? Obviously for you, I mean, you're an adult. But for the child, it means the world for them. If you recognize their innocence and their immaturity, and you actually respect that, and you grow with them. And this is why Umar ibn Khattab himself, رضي الله عنه, he said, ينبغي للرجل أن يكون في أهله كالطفل الصغير. He says a man, when he goes back home, he's supposed to be a child. You're supposed to behave like a child. Stop using your brain, that's right, that's wrong. That works, that doesn't work. Forget about your professionalism, become an innocent child. Play with the kids, win them over. It seems to be a very common notion that it's normal, that's the default situation, where kids are going to confide in their friends. They're going to trust external sources or external individuals outside the family, not the parents. They don't trust the parents. It seems like the default. No. This only happens if there's a mistake in the relationship. I'm telling you, it only happens. The child by nature, they are designed to look up to their parents. They crave the love of their parents. They want the friendship of their parents. If you offer genuine, I'm not saying fake it. If you fake it, it doesn't work. They'll see through it, they'll see it as manipulation, and they will see it as control, as passive control, and they would actually rebel against it. Give them genuine love, genuine concern, open up to them, and engage with them at the level of their innocence and the level of their mind. Become a novice again, become a child again with them. Share their beautiful moments and experiences. And we'll talk something in a bit more depth about this when we talk about how to create a family culture that is conducive for preparing our children for what's going to happen, or for the challenging they will face. So when you become a child with them and you open up to them, whenever they want to speak, they'll find you there. Whenever they need help, they'll find you there for them. Whenever they need your attention, you will be all ears for them. You will notice that they will come to you because you are the most trustworthy source in their life. They will tell you about their friends. And they will tell you about their own mistakes because they will feel safe. And this kind of myth will be completely debunked. That kids trust their teachers, or they trust their friends, they trust people their age, they don't trust their parents. No, because you have pushed them away for so long. You have judged them for so long that they have learned not to trust you. And that's why they search for trust and for love outside the house. That's not